Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to our live stream series, Fashion and the Circular Economy. We are super excited to be back again and throughout the day. We have Emilie from MXMLST Co. coming up with us here at 11:30, who will be joining us live from Calgary, where it's 9:30 in the morning. So we'll just wait a moment for that to start coming in. There she is, nice and keen. And I will put her in, and I will allow it to load this time. I was saying in the first live stream that...
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I was expecting a party people intro.
Hello, party people.
Yes. Exactly. Well, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be part of the festival, although from afar. I would have liked to be there in person, but maybe that's for next year.
Yeah. I mean, you are I think our furthest guest, so.
What an honor.
So if you did want to, love the branded mug, by the way.
I didn't even do it on purpose. It's the only clean one I have, so I guess I always leave it clean for special occasions.
Exactly. For when you have to be on the news and...
Yeah. All of my media appearances,
Okay, so as people are joining us this morning, if you wanted to take a minute to introduce yourself and let us know how you're part of the sustainable fashion community.
Absolutely. So hello, everyone. My name is Emilie Gagnon, and I am the founder and creator of MXMLST Collection. MXMLST Collection is a sustainable fashion destination, I like to say, because I kind of I do so much. I upcycle a lot of clothing and fabrics. I make clothing from scratch. I sell vintage and secondhand clothing, mostly vintage clothing. And I have a newsletter where I talk about fashion and style. And I also have dabbled in costume design and all kinds of different things that have to do with the clothing industry and the fashion industry in a sustainable way. So MXMLST was born 2 years ago now, a little bit over 2 years. Yeah, it's been a wild ride and it's been incredible. And I can't believe that I'm here talking to you now from Calgary. It all started in Ottawa. So for all of you Ontarians there, I know the market quite well. It all started in Ottawa and I moved here about a year ago to work on a show, and then I never left because I love it here.
And that was where I met you. When I went to
the
Relove Market, and which was a fantastic collection of vintage and resellers and upcycled materials, which was a great way. Fun. And I am wearing
every time I see you, you're wearing it. I'm so happy.
I'm representing Calgary today with my purchase from you.
Yes. I love it.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you came into these industries?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question because it was all very random. So this is for everyone that wants to get into this space. You don't need to start anywhere. I've always dreamt of going into fashion and being fashion has always been the number one thing that has followed me my whole life. We moved around a lot growing up, and that was it was my way of expressing myself in a way that felt very true to me. It was my kind of niche area of interest. I would kind of I mean, this is very early 2000s, but I was obsessed with magazines. I wanted to be I dove myself into magazines, fashion magazines, and I would read them from cover to cover. And I was just so enthralled with this world that seemed so inaccessible for someone like me who, is a size 14, who was young, who only had, my parents were both kind of in a traditional industry, in government and teaching, which doesn't open a lot of doors to the fashion industry. Everything seemed so out of touch of reality. It didn't seem like something that was viable for me. Even in university, I just decided to go in communications and geography because that was the safe way. I wanted to go to fashion school, but there was no one in my family or in my surroundings that had done anything creative. So it didn't seem like a viable option. So what happened is that I got into communications, and I would apply for these like random industry jobs, and like that seemed super super far-fetched, and they were, because I never got them. But it still didn't feel true to like the values that I kind of like was going towards. I've always been a shopper, but I've never been kind of exposed to sustainable fashion and even secondhand fashion, because, you know, like my mom and my parents like grew up relatively poor. So like the whole, not relatively poor, but like they only had second like hand-me-downs from their siblings, mostly my mom. So like when we go shopping together, which was our connection piece, we would never go secondhand shopping, because it was something that she had passed, you know, in her life. And now, like, obviously there was a consciousness shift that brought it back to the forefront, but it was never something I was exposed to. So I did a whole 10-year career in communications, politics, and marketing. And then during the pandemic, I didn't want to be in politics anymore. And I was like, well, it's now or never. I'm going to start something, and it's going to be secondhand fashion. And it was the most accessible way of getting into the industry. And then I just dove right in, and now there's no other way. There's like, to me, fashion, there's no other way of going around expressing yourself through it. It opened up a whole can of creativity for me that I never thought was accessible. And now it's become my business. It's become my passion. It's just become my life. And I'm really grateful for it. I kind of made it accessible to myself. And I think that the secondhand and sustainable fashion industry is getting more and more widespread, which is allowing for more and more people like me to see it as an accessible kind of avenue to express yourself and to create a business out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you find that your background in communications transferred into how you modeled your business?
100%. I've worked in so many different places. I actually just gave a course to Algonquin College students about branding, and how it's transferred over time in my career. You know, I was at Destination Canada at the start of my career, so I was marketing like a destination, like a tourist destination. And then I went to agency world, where I was marketing, you know, anything from crown corporations to products to, you know, like networks and internal communications pieces, and then to politics, where I was marketing a person. So it kind of like, all of that experience did trickle into how I kind of brand myself online. I rely a lot on social media, mostly because it comes naturally to me, and it's something that I love. It's a way of connecting with people in just like this, in a way that, you know, isn't possible in many other ways. I think what it provided me was also the tools, the strategic kind of thinking tools of like what will lead to something successful. But again, like it is marketing yourself is so different than marketing someone else's work. It's everyone, whether you have a comms or marketing background, it's always hard to put yourself out there. So that challenge has I have not been immune to that challenge, and it still remains the hardest thing, but it's also the most rewarding thing, because if it comes from an authentic place, then it's only gonna, you know, be coming, you know, intentionally reaching the right people is what I'm thinking, you know.
And being sort of the face of your own brand, and, you know, modeling your clothes and showing people your process and your progress. It's a tough thing to be sort of the face of a brand, and then you're marketing that brand. And I've experienced that a lot with the Tool Library. I am our marketing department and our comms department. So, you know, I'm the face and voice on a lot of our content. And it's a challenging thing. And it was a big thing for us during the pandemic, because we had to go strictly online with all of our programming. And as a program coordinator, that was a really I think my first live stream lasted 6 minutes and it was planned to be 25. And I just forgot everything I had
But
to
then
say.
you did it.
But I did it, and you grow with it, and you keep going. And I got inspired by a lot of other creators and
Yeah.
seeing what people were doing and thinking, how can we bring that to our market? So with that, are there organizations or creators that have inspired you on your journey to build this brand?
Yeah, for me, the biggest inspiration, especially at the start, and now, I mean, she remains to be the one person that inspires me in her confidence and her creativity, and it's B. Jones Style from, she's out in California, and she has a YouTube channel, and I love watching YouTube videos, thrifters and secondhand fashion stylists and stuff, and I love that, and B. Jones Style has given me, I saw myself in her, and I think that a lot of people do. She's super bubbly, and she has all these creative ideas. She like started a newsletter, and then does her YouTube channel, and then is so unapologetic about what she wears. For me, it started, she inspired me to share my outfits on a daily basis, and that's become like a consistent thing in my branding, and that's where it really just started, like me sharing my outfits. And then it just, I started building, I started making, and I started kind of like showcasing my work in a different way. But what I always tell people where they, and yeah, so B. Jones Style is my main inspiration. I see a lot of other creators that I think get the same kind of inspiration and that do incredible things because it comes from an authentic place. And that's like well-loved clothing on YouTube as well. And a lot of different resellers in Canada that I follow, they like we're just it's just such a cool community of people in the vintage and styling and secondhand styling space, that you just kind of like get things from a bunch of different people, yeah, I think B. Jones Style was my first inspiration and remains one of my biggest inspirations, not only in style but in the way that she presents herself online. And none of her content is perfect, which is what I love.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, I mean, I'm not a perfectionist at all. It's always like my stuff is always a little chaotic, and it's part of my brand. And I've accepted that, and I'm really I'm proud of it at this point, which is something that I want to carry through, just to showcase that this can be accessible to so many people. It's not just me. It's accessible to so many people because everyone's voice is so important.
For sure. And unique as well.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've noticed when I go to a market, where there are vintage resellers, like something like the Relove Market,
Yeah.
that everybody has different aesthetics, different styles, different price points, catering to such a wide clientele, that it's starting to make that market more accessible as like your first choice.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that we talked about with the Salvation Army, was making secondhand your first choice. And that phrase really resonated with me. And you would think that sometimes it's all going to be like clothes from the 70s or clothes from the 90s, or it's not going to be my style. And you go and you find these pieces that speak to you, like how this spoke to me and told me a story, and helped me sort of relive a memory through a piece of vintage clothing.
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting that there's been that shift in the vintage and secondhand industry, that it's being made for everybody now, and there's more size inclusivity and different types of styles from around the world that we're seeing. So rather than
it's really interesting the way, I was listening to the Salvation Army talk, and it was super interesting because where she talks about they're in the space of recovery, and we're just a different kind of, there's been a lot of, media attention towards resellers, and is it good? Is it bad? Is it what's driving up prices? Thrift stores, I truly don't think it is. I mean, I'm a little biased, of course, but it's also, there's so much stuff. And
Exactly.
everyone has a different experience with every piece that they find. Someone, you know, I have so many friends that don't want to go to the thrift store because it is overwhelming. It is so overwhelming to go in there. So a curator like me will come in and kind of curate them toward like, and put it in a collection that seems more accessible to people, not only for price point. Like for me, my stuff is relatively accessible, you know, like it's about the same piece. It's about the same prices that you would pay at H&M for pieces, which is quite accessible. If you're, you know, if you're going to the mall, you're still going to buy stuff from H&M. It's not thrift store Shein prices, but it'll be like, you know, the Zara H&M prices, which in turn provides such a better option for it, for our environment and for everything. But yeah, everyone has a different eye, and everyone creates a different experience when you interact with them. So you're not only buying a piece, you're buying the eye of the curator. You're buying the story behind it. And that's what not only makes vintage so good for the environment, but it's so interesting, and it creates a world where you can express yourself in such a more authentic and rich way.
Special, you know? Yeah.
I don't know. I love talking about this stuff.
And that's precisely the experience that I had with you just a few weeks ago when I was visiting Calgary.
Oh, that makes me so
and
happy.
You pulled these pieces, you know, just based on my size and my style, and getting to try these things on that I like immediately was feeling a connection to.
Yeah.
And like it was bringing out different moods in me and like conjuring up all kinds of feelings and plans. And that's kind of the really exciting thing about vintage, is that there are so many stories connected to these pieces. And, you know, I put something on and I'm like, I feel like my aunt in 1995.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that was such a cool feeling to like feel connected to a person, and then think about like, who was the person who owned this, who lived a whole life in this prior to me. And I think there's a lot that carries through to the next steward. I don't even want to say owner. I feel like, you know,
again, it's like,
and just stewarding clothing.
Yeah, and the thing with vintage is that it's lasted this long. So that means that it can last that much longer. You know, it's been, you know, the 70s pieces now, I can't do math, but like, you know, like 40 years old, you know, and like, imagine if it's another 40 years old, you know, like that is what the circular economy is. It's like, how long can we make it last? All these vintage pieces are built in a different way that we don't see in fast fashion right now. And it carries, because of its construction and the intention behind making these pieces, there's no more intention behind and creativity really behind the fast fashion pieces that we're seeing in malls and in online and stuff like that. There's very little intention and creativity. So how can you build sustainable practices and pieces and products without having the intention of sustainability and the creativity to make this something that will last and that will, you know, create memories for years to come? Because yes, this is literally fabric that we put on our bodies, but it is also so tied into our identity and the stories and the way that we show up in the world and the impact we're going to make in the world, that it's so important to make this an intentional practice and a creative practice in order for you to show up in a better way. And that's how businesses should think about sustainability. It's about the intention and the creativity that will create the sustainability. There's no way around it, you know?
Certainly. And you did a unique challenge for yourself in September.
I did.
Where you gave new life to a shelf of vintage fabrics that you've been holding on to.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what that process was like and just that journey?
Absolutely. So Maximalist started with a creative project that I gave myself. I didn't want to go crazy at the beginning of the pandemic during the first lockdown in April of 2020. And I told myself, I will create something, whatever it is, every day for the month of April, and I will write about it. I will write about it on my blog. So I had a blog at the time, and that's what I did. I created something every day, and then I blogged about it. And what it in turns did was that it gave me the inkling of starting Maximalist, and it gave me the confidence, and it also allowed me to steer away from politics where I was at the time in a much more seamless way. It kind of made decisions quite clear. So I was kind of, again, in a bit of a rut in August, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I have so much fabric that I have accumulated over time, and a lot of pieces that I wanted to, that I loved the fabric on, but they were, you know, there was so much wrong with the pieces, whether it was poor construction, but they were from the 70s. And I was like, oh my God, I need to use this. This can't go to waste. So in September, I had time, and I decided I'm going to make as much stuff as possible, as many pieces as possible with the amount of, with the fabric that I already owned. I thought I was going to make much more of a dent in my fabric stash, but it is insane how much you can make with small pieces of fabric. Mm-hmm. And honestly, what it showed me, it really kind of like it made me deep dive into the sustainable creation aspect of. I made 15 pieces, and I barely made a dent in my stash. And although it was creatively, it was like incredible. I just love, it's like my outlet. I love building. I love, you know, the tactile activity of making clothing. But it really showed me the amount of time you need to make a piece of clothing. Mm-hmm. And it just made me think about all of the intensive labor that fast fashion companies put on factories and in other countries to make these insane, like 500 pieces a day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. I posted on my stories today this thread about Shein and how little they pay their garment workers, and it just made me really kind of like, although I knew all this information, when you put it into practice and you're like, oh, this is how long it takes to make a shirt, and this is how much I made, and I made 15 pieces in a month. They make so many a day and get paid nothing for it. So what it really highlighted a lot of different things within myself and like the practices that I'm taking. And it really reignited my creativity in a whole other way. And now I'll be showing my collection at Lethbridge Fashion Weekend in November.
Amazing.
So, you know, like there's different things when discipline and creativity kind of merge, that's where I see magic. So that's been fun. It's been fun, but it's also been very eye-opening.
Exactly.
And and I wrote about it on my newsletter, on a newsletter article. So if you want to, for anyone who wants to go and read that, you can go on my Substack, Maximalist Edit, for that. But yeah, it was a great challenge, and it really created a voice for myself in my design. And I really loved it. And I'm keeping on going. I'm not done yet. I've been making like crazy still.
So on a sort of closing thought, what does a circular fashion economy look like to you?
Right. I love that question. To me, a circular fashion economy doesn't just come from the circularity of clothes and pieces themselves and extending the life. Like, was it Tawny, her name?
Yes.
From the south. Yeah, the extending the life of a garment. That's ultimately part of it, but it's also the circularity of knowledge that needs to happen in a whole other way. So whether that's mending clothing, knowing about fabrics and what work, how to wash, like care tactics.
Yes.
And it's knowledge of the impact that it has that the industry has on the world. So I think that the ideal economy would be where the traditional fashion industry and the secondhand and sustainable fashion industry just become one industry. Right now it's so siloed because there's no knowledge sharing. There's no innovation. Well, there is a bit of innovation, but only if you have a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And it's very siloed in so many different ways. So I think that the circularity is not only with the thinking about the pieces and the product, it's changing consumer behavior, and it's creating a knowledge bank for everyone to have access know how to repair a button and to see the ease that you can create, you can extend the life cycle of your clothes in such an easy way, in a very accessible way.
Yes.
And
Making it easy, accessible, and like interesting, intriguing, something that people want to learn about and not like a chore. I think we associate things like repair and laundry as chores, but they're really just you stewarding the things that you possess, and learning how to take care of them is an important part of life.
Yeah.
Same way that we learn to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
Learning to take care of our clothing and the other fabrics and fibers in our lives is really important, because the better care you give them, the longer that they can live, and the better chance they have of becoming something else at their end of life.
Exactly. Again, it comes with the intention behind it. Like, even if you love a piece, you know, and it's a fast fashion piece, there's nothing wrong with that. But just ask yourself, even at the start, when you first purchase it, if something happens to it, do I care enough about this piece to mend it? Or to find someone that can show me how to mend it? Or to change it completely, take the sleeves off, you know, add a button somewhere, you know, like there's so many different things that you can do to rethink it. So it's the intention behind you that, like, this thinking needs to happen pre-purchase in order for you to be able to do it after. So it's that creativity and that intention, again, that needs to come from the consumers and companies, especially the ones that don't really that greenwash a lot of things, and that don't necessarily take it seriously for their bottom line.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's been wonderful chatting with you.
Oh, it's so fun.
It always is.
I know, we can go forever every time.
I can't wait until I'm in Calgary again to come and see you.
I can't wait.
And thank you so much for being a part of the Circular Fashion Festival and sharing this conversation with us.
I'm so happy I could be part of it, even from afar.
Yes. And for anybody who's just tuning in or watching this recorded, yes, we are recording these conversations. They will be uploaded to our page immediately following our chat. And we'll link those in the description for how to get to your blog and your website as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see a lot of you on my page, and I would love to continue this conversation in any way, shape, or form. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful day, and have happy festival. I hope all of the events go incredibly well. I'm so excited for you, and I'm really sad I'm missing it, but I will be following along very, very closely.
Next year.
Next year.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.